we have today, oh my God, some of the women that we've had on this show have been so incredibly inspirational. Haven't they?
Yeah.
And it seems they seem to get more and more inspirational by the second. So we have the wonderful Liz McConaghy. Did I say it right?
You did get it right, Debbie. You did get it right.
Well done.
Oh, Liz. I mean, you look like a beautiful, feminine little girl. How did this feminine, gorgeous lady become a pilot and, in the Chinooks?
Yeah.
Tell us when it started.
Well, it all started, but I went to, I'm from Northern Ireland, if you hadn't guessed from the accent by now.
With a shillelagh under my arm,
yeah.
a twinkle in the eye.
And I had no forces background at all or anything like that. And my older brother was really keen on the army, and we kind of grew up in this idyllic countryside, playing army during the day, running off, with our backpacks and a wagon wheel and talking walkie-talkies. And when he was 18, he went up to a place back in Northern Ireland called Palace Barracks to join the army. And me, being his little sister, went with him for some moral support, as you do. And he went in to do his exam to join up. And while he was in there, I saw a magazine on the table. And on the front of the magazine, it had a chap hanging out the side of a helicopter on what I thought was a piece of rope. So I said to the guys in uniform, what's this job? The guy in the rope, it looks really cool. And he said, well, for starters, it's not a rope, it's a wire. And the job title is helicopter crewman. And I just wanted to be that. I didn't even know anything about it at that point. I just thought I want to be that rock star on the magazine. So I did some inquiries. I had an interview back in Palace Barracks, got accepted to go across to Cranwell in England, RAF Cranwell, do aptitude tests and fitness testing and a medical, passed all that. And then on my 19th birthday, got to sign up and serve Queen and Country. And spent 17 and a half years doing that thereafter.
Tell us about when you first went into combat. How did you feel about that and what happened?
Yeah, so I was quite lucky. I kind of whizzed through my basic training quite quickly. So I finished my running around, learning how to be in the military training. And then I stepped up into my learning how to fly in a helicopter training and working as a helicopter crew, which is very different because it's a lot about communication. You're wearing a helmet. And you have to talk a lot on the intercom because people can't always see all the things you're talking about. So you have to switch up. You can't just point at something and go, oh, it's over there. You have to describe things and work as a crew and not talk over each other and things like that and balance your radio. So a massive learning curve. And then I was very lucky that I then got sent to Chinook helicopters, which are the big green buses with the two rotor blades, one at the front and one at the back. So they're very distinctive looking. They're basically the battlefield bus. And I always wanted to go on that airframe. So I was very lucky that I arrived there when I was 21.
Wow.
Skipped through the school on Chinooks and then was sent to Iraq when I was 21. So I was the youngest air crew to ever go to Iraq.
Oh my goodness.
In 2003, and I was quite lucky in that respect that the war fighting had finished, so all the big Iraq invasion had come and gone, and most of the stuff we were doing was kind of just moving a lot of the support troops around and around theatre and a lot of the freight. But I remember, just being in a war zone. You wear different coloured combats when you go to war. You're wearing your desert combats. It's hot. Like a girl from Northern Ireland stepping off an airplane and it being 45 degrees. It was a real kicker.
Goodness.
And, I think just a really different environment.
But Liz, what happened when did you sort of drop down?
Drop down out of it.
Yeah.
So to end the Afghan thing, we pulled out of there in 2015, I think it was. It was a 10-year campaign, and I'd been 10 times by the time that finished. Pretty much the Chinook force had been that often. And the Chinook's not a kind aircraft on the body. It's a big shaking sieve, essentially. And I ended up developing some neck pain from wearing my helmet, my night vision goggles, and flying for hours and hours on end. And again, our job's very manual. We're moving all the kit down the back of the aircraft. So you certainly, you earn your calories by the end of the day. But it all took its toll on me. So my neck was playing up. I did a couple of rehab courses. That didn't fix it. And sadly, I was medically discharged in 2019. And it was like having my uniform ripped off me. I always say my flying suit was like my Wonder Woman costume. I put it on every day, and I became a Chinook crewman. It wasn't a job to me. It was who I was.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, way ahead of time, I was just Liz from Basingstoke, and that was so dull compared to being Liz, a Chinook crewman. So I really lost my sense of identity overnight. So things were okay in 2019. I thought I had life squared away and I was about to start a whole new career path. I'm only 37, I've got my whole life ahead of me. And then 2020, lockdown hit. And well, it's fair to say for all of us, life changed overnight really. And suddenly I couldn't keep busy anymore because all I had to do all day was sit with my own thoughts. I'd used running as a very effective coping mechanism during my time in the forces, and suddenly that was snatched away as well, because early lockdown you were allowed 10 minutes exercise, and that just wasn't worth putting your trainers on for most days. All these things were starting to really fall apart, and as lockdown progressed, I developed insomnia, and again, sleep underpins everything we do. Like, you have one bad night's sleep and how rough do you feel the next day, and the accumulative effect of insomnia is, you know, incredible on our bodies in terms of your brain starts to play tricks on you. You, instead of, you know, when you're tired the next day and you're not exercising, you just fill your body full of junk food, which is like putting chemicals in your body, and that then feeds your brain cycle as well. And I started to really go down this dark, dark spiral. And it came to a head in the June when one night I couldn't sleep and I got my logbooks out. And I started to look up some of the soldiers that we picked up in Afghanistan. Now, one of the duties we did in Afghanistan was this thing called the Medical Emergency Response Team. And that was essentially the flying ambulance. So we would, as a crew, sit on standby. One of the soldiers gets injured in the Helmand Valley, and we would get airborne as quick as we could to go and rescue the casualty. The problem was it wasn't obviously a successful outcome each time. And in the early days, I mean, some of the injuries we were picking up were, you know, broken bones, broken legs, people who had fallen off a roof. But as things progressed, it got much more traumatic. So we were then picking up people with no legs, torsos of bodies, multiple casualties. So here I was looking them all up at 4 o'clock in the morning and humanising them. You know, were they fathers? Were they brothers? One guy had proposed his fiancée before he got home or before he went and never made it back. So they weren't just people, they weren't just bodies in a body bag anymore. They were real people with a real story and a life attached to them. Really dangerous behaviours from me, you know, looking these people up. And I knew that I was really struggling and the red flags were all flying, but I didn't reach out for help. I didn't tell anyone. And that continued to snowball. You know, every time I put my head in the pillow, my brain just switched on and got really busy, and I was going through weapon handling drills, things that I would never need to know again, but things that mattered at the time when I did need to know them. So they were clearly lodged somewhere in my brain, and they would come back up and resurface. And it came to a real head in August 2020 when I basically woke up one morning and decided that I was going to end my life that night, and spent the entire day planning it with meticulous fashion.
No.
So, yeah. So I think when I woke up that morning and I was having these very intrusive suicidal thoughts, I was really scared initially, really scared. And I thought, this isn't normal. So I reached out for help. And I think when you're crumbling inside like that, it's very hard to pick up the phone and ask for help. So I emailed the doc and said, hello, this is me. I woke up this morning. I'm feeling very suicidal. I think I need to come and speak to someone. So I emailed them. I got an email back straight away saying, hi, this is the pharmacy. You've emailed us by mistake. We're next door. You need to contact the GP. So, no, like, do you want to come in and speak to someone, or, you know, are you okay? And I think, again, that's the sign of the times. Everybody was so like stretched and maxed out during COVID time. People just didn't have enough time to read and go, this woman needs catching. So I then phoned the GP, got a lovely lady on the phone, and I explained how I was feeling. And she said, look, we're really busy. Can you call back tomorrow? So, and usually when I'm on a stage talking about this is where people either gasp or laugh, because it was such a classic COVID kind of response. So in the afternoon, about 2 o'clock, the locum GP rang. And at this point, these suicidal feelings of ending my life had just been building all morning. And I was really, really struggling to even get the words out. And he said, I'm going to prescribe you some antidepressants and they'll be ready this afternoon at 4 o'clock. And he did say, before you take them, or take one today, but be aware that they will put you in a worse place before they pull you out of that mental place.
Goodness.
Well, that's how antidepressants work. They can put you in a dip and then they pull you out. But at no point did he say, do you want to come in and speak to someone? So I remember hanging up the phone at that point and just thinking, well, that's it then. You know, even the professionals just don't care. And I think from that point on, I felt this sense of relief, this almost green light go with my plan. So I spent the afternoon planning it. I wrote a suicide note to my parents and didn't even have a tear in my eye. I mean, I had mentally checked out of life at that point. You know, I always use the analogy, I was on one of those water slides at water park. I'd picked up my donut and I was only going one way that night.
Gosh.
And I went across at 4 o'clock to the pharmacy, who I'd already told I wanted to kill myself, and picked up my lethal dose of drugs from them and then walked home.
It's quite shocking, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I tidied my apartment, and I had dinner. Had a shower, did my hair and makeup, put on a nice dress, and at midnight took a lot of pills, and I was very lucky that I survived. And now, again, whenever I do talks and things on stages, I always say to people, you've got to get to someone before they get to that stage, because if you don't get your hands on someone before they've mentally checked out, it's too late at that point. You have to do it beforehand. And I think the way to do that is to ask people twice how they are, because that year, a few people knew I was struggling and said, you know, how are you doing, Liz? And I'd go, well, I'm good. How are you? How's the family? How's the kids? And get the spotlight off me straight away, because we all do that when we're struggling inside. You don't want to talk about it, do you? So you just deflect it. But the odd person who asked a second time, how are you really? It was enough to kind of just like break the eggshell, chink the armour a bit, and sometimes that's when the emotion would come out. So I do think, you know, if you have anyone you are worried about, if you think might be struggling, you've got to ask them twice. You've got to get under that skin.